Hello, today I'm going to teach you how to convert between fractions, decimals and percentages. Fractions, decimals and percentages are three ways of saying the same thing. Now eventually you will become familiar with the common fractions, decimals and percentages and be able to switch between them pretty easily. But today I'm going to teach you methods on how to do that. I'm going to start with converting between a decimal and a percentage. To convert between a decimal and a percentage, you first need to realise that a decimal is part of 1, so a small part of 1 whole, and a percentage is part of 100. So to convert from a decimal to a percentage, you need to multiply by 100. So to do that, I've written out my hundreds, tens, units, tenths and hundreds grid. I'm going to place my number into that grid. And because I'm multiplying by 100, this number is going to get bigger. So all the numbers are going to move 2 spaces to the left. Let's start with the 0. The 0 is going to jump 2 spaces up to 100. The 7 is going to jump 2 spaces to the tenths. And the 5 is going to jump 2 spaces to the units. So our final number becomes 0, 7, 5, or 75. Like so. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to go from a percentage to a decimal. To do this, we need to divide by 100. We'll end up making this number smaller. So we take our 12% and we put it into our 100 tens and units column. We've got 1 tenth and 2 units. Now this time we're dividing by 100. Because 100's got 2 zeros, that means we're jumping 2 spaces backwards. The one that's in the tens column is going to jump 2 spaces and end up in the tens column. The 2 that's in the unit is going to jump 2 spaces and end up in the hundreds column. And that will give us a number 0.12. And we need to fill this units column with something, so we're going to put a 0 in there to fill that space. So our final answer becomes 0.12. Okay, now I want to show you how to get from a percentage to a fraction. This involves us writing the percentage over 100 and then simplifying. So if we have a number like 25%, the first instruction was to write that number over 100, because percent means out of 100. So we've got 25 out of a total 100. Now the next step was to simplify this number. Now to simplify it, we need to find a number that goes into the number in the top and number in the bottom without leaving in any remainders. So in this example, the number 25 goes into this number without any remainders, and the number 25 also goes into this number without any remainders. 25 goes into 25 once, and 25 goes into 100 4 times. And that's how we simplify 25% to become a quarter. With the next one, 60%, we write 60 over 100 first of all. So I need to find a number that goes into 60 and goes into 100. The number I'm thinking of is 10. I think 10 will go into both numbers without leaving any remainders. 10 goes into 60 6 times, and 10 goes into 100 10 times. Now I realise that this number is not simplified to its simplest form. There's still a number that can go into both of these and leave no remainders. That number is 2. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. So the simplest form of 60 out of 100 is 3/5. So 60% as a fraction is 3/5. The final stage I want to show you is how to get from a fraction to a decimal. And it says here we need to divide the numerator by the denominator. The final stage I want to show you is how to get from a fraction to a decimal. And it says here we need to divide the numerator by the denominator. The numerator is the top part of a fraction. So in the example of a half, the numerator is a 1. And the denominator is the bottom half of the fraction. So in this example, it's a 2. Now it said we had to divide the numerator by the denominator. So we need to divide the number 1 by the number 2. So I'm dividing a smaller number by a bigger number. This means that I'm going to get an answer that's less than 1, a decimal answer. So, first of all, we see how many times 2 fits into 1. And it doesn't. So, instead of giving the remainder as the answer, we're going to put that remainder onto the next number. 1 can also be described as 1.0000 and so on. So that 1 that was left over gets carried over to here. And we could even square this out if you like. 2 didn't go into 1, so we've got 1 left over. 2 does go into 10. 2 goes into 10 5 times. And because we've got a decimal point in our question, we also need to put that decimal point in our answer. So that's how you get from a fraction, 1 over 2, or a half, to 0.5, which is our decimal equivalent. I'll try that one more time. This time I'll do a slightly trickier fraction. I'll do 3/5. So that would be 3 divided by 5. Now 5 doesn't go into 3. So we put a 0 here. And that 3 gets carried on to the next column. 5 does go into 30. It goes into 36 times. So we get 0.6. And 0.6 is the equivalent of 3/5. So that was a whistle-stop tour of fractions, decimals and percentages and how to convert between them. Now each step of this grid needs a lot of practice to become confident in the different operations. But I hope by watching this video you have a better understanding of how to convert between the three and that you're inspired to go and practice yourself. Good luck! Why don't you have a go at making some fractions, decimals and percentages flashcards? These can be used as a pairs game, they can be used as Snap or as dominoes, or just reminders of the different numbers that you want to focus on. So yeah, link them together. So I've got my decimal, my percentage, my fraction and simplified there as well. For this one, 0.8. To get the percentage, first of all, I need to multiply this by 100 to get 80%. And to get a fraction for that one, I need to put it over 100. So 80 over 100. And simplified, well, I know that 10 goes into both numbers, so that become 8 tenths. And there you go. That's a wee activity that can help you remember the links and between fractions, decimals and percentages and help you convert between them. So have a go yourself and enjoy.